Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today we have another brother from another mother here. I'm looking, Gus Castro. Did I get that? Did I pronounce that correctly?
You got it. You got it. Great job.
Well, we were just talking, and I always like to say, hey, man, like, let's get this on the air because I always love to connect with other wonderful practitioners. That's why your lab coat, you go and you're a mad scientist that applied a formula, tested and tried, and you're successful. Give people text. We're a former Microsoft engineer, been in real estate industry since 2010, and offline we're to actually create an inside sales team, over 65 agents plus. You're doing more than $50,000, 50,000 calls per day with team, setting up appointments for buyers and sellers. Again, you've scaled it, 7-figure plus business, and you active clients. I mean, this is one talking about, how your mind kind of went into this business. I'm so excited to have you here in the lab because you can talk about it as the, former engineer or the current engineer that you are, because it never goes away. And I'm so excited to welcome you into the lab. So first of all, welcome in, Gus. And how are you feeling, man?
Hey, doing it right. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. I love the approach you take to the show because experimentation is kind of what it's all about, right? So people that put that to practice, they lose the fear, they gain the confidence, and they're always trying new things, right? Especially in the investment space. People are always looking for that edge. They're always looking for that edge. What's that? What's the small thing, the slight edge that's going to, differentiate them, make a big difference in their business, drive massive. It can go from struggling and barely getting by to massive ROI by always trying new things out, and that's the way to do it. Love that.
Yeah, well, and I love we were talking about this offline, right? I mean, this is your as an engineer or artist to save problems and not accept things as they always were. And so I want to go back to, I always say this before I start every show, I say, you are a reflection of your business, or your business is a reflection of you. So Gus, this is where we're going to take it back to the blueprint, right? Like, okay, you're solving problems, you're Microsoft, money, and you go to real estate and you see a problem, or you were scratching your own. How did it happen? Because I can tell you how it happened for me. I was scratching my own itch, but for you, what was it that jump or that transition into real estate? Can you tell us a little bit about that background?
Yeah, absolutely. People always kind of, it's a curious story, right? I mean, you're in high tech. High tech is a big thing right now, right? It's like, if you're going to be a W-2 employee, like, well, I'd like to work in high tech. That'd be,
that's the way to go. I mean, shoot.
Yeah, 100%, right? So people are always like, how you got in there? Why did you leave, right? So, and I think it kind of goes back to everyone, right? You got to know kind of what your strengths are. You got to know what your purpose is. You got to know what you want in life, right? Because if what you want is a great corporation to plug into, a career path that's kind of laid out in front of you, and really good compensation, not gonna lie, man, high tech pays extremely well. If that's what you want, high tech is a dream, right? It's a dream. And when I first got to Microsoft, I became like a minor. I'm from Mexico, born and raised in Mexico. I became a minor celebrity in my town. It was like, man, it's like Gus made it, right?
Yeah.
He made it to the US, got into this is back in the early 2000s. For the old, OGs in the room, Microsoft was the be all end all of everything in the early 2000s, right? It was like Microsoft was the number one place in town. It was the only game in town for a lot of these platforms. It was crazy. And, I was there and I had made it. But what I realized was, and it only took me a couple of years to figure this out, that it was a dream, but it wasn't my dream. It's a dream job. It was not my dream job. It was not my dream job. And you start to notice these things, right? I mean, it gets a little bit harder to wake up in the morning. It's a little bit harder to put in the extra hours. These high tech jobs are demanding, right? They're really, you earn a lot but you work a lot, right? So it's, we always joke that your hourly wage is barely above McDonald's, but not that you put in the hours but you're passionate. If you're passionate about what you're doing, it's a great job, regardless of the amount of hours you put into it, right? So what I realized, after a few years in, I said, well, I just got to switch teams. I got to change disciplines. I got to do something different because I'm gonna find my calling, my strengths, and I did that.
And can I ask you, Gus? Because I think that's important because I go through it now, especially during these times where people might be, maybe stuck at home and they're reflecting. Can I actually walk? I think this is very important, and we don't talk about it enough. Like that transitional, like that. I think that might not be okay for me. And then that next call to action, like what do you do after you get that? Because a lot of people who are listening right now, you might have some people are listening are like, yes, that's me, but like I'm stuck. I don't know what to do next. What did you do? Us through that step as well, because I think that's important for people to like kind of relate to.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, man. 100%. I get that. I understand it, and I want to try to make this relatable to folks. I didn't understand what was happening at the time. I just knew I was not satisfied. It just came out as insatisfaction. You're not satisfied, right? You're like, okay, well, I'm not content. I'm complaining. I'm a millennial, a complaining millennial, right? Doesn't feel satisfied and fulfilled in their job. I mean, not a lot of people are going to have a lot of empathy for you when you're in high tech making six figures and you're not happy, right? So it was a little bit of a tough situation. But there's always, it's never one thing. At least my experience, it's never been one thing. It's a collection of things, right? And this didn't happen overnight for me. I knew I had to make a change my second, maybe third year in Microsoft. I didn't jump ship until my 10th year at Microsoft. So I stuck around for a while, kind of thinking, I got to make this work, man. Microsoft is the place. This is where I got to make it happen. And until I realized, well, maybe that's not true, right? And the catalyst to all this, I got to give her credit, was my wife. She, I went to school in Mexico, grew up in Mexico, and she came over from Mexico with me to Seattle for Microsoft. And she got licensed in real estate. As soon as she was able to work, like she got her papers and everything, she's like, I want to become a real estate agent. I'm like, I was kind of surprised because she was also an engineer, right? It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. And her family came from a very entrepreneurial background. Mine didn't, right? Like, what is that about? And her kind of doing her own deals, making it happen. This was 2008, by the way. She got licensed at the beginning of 2008. So people don't remember that world was ending, in that year, and then the year later, it was bad. It was a bad situation for real estate. But I got to see the beginning of an unbelievable investor market, right? I had never seen anything like it. I didn't know what was going on. It was a weird time. And my wife was jumping into that. She became the rookie of the year in her office, and she worked with investors and short sales and REOs and all these things. I was like, that's super interesting, man. 10 times more interesting than what I was doing every day at Microsoft. That industry, that movement, that people were making things happen like day and night. They would start businesses and close businesses and pivot businesses and do things in real estate. And at Microsoft, I was a cog in the machine. I was like moving the next bit of the machine forward. And again, I go back to it. If you're passionate about design, about software, about building stuff for the consumer, that's a great job. But if that's not your passion, I felt like I was stuck, right? So that was happening. And at the same time, another thing, which is equally as important for me, my mom got diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at 65, man, 65 years old. She got a devastating disease. It was like a crazy thing, really tough thing to go through for the whole family. And that opened my eyes to go, you might not have all the time you think you have. You might think that you want to put things off until let me get the kids through school, and then I'll do whatever I want. Let me get that next mortgage. Let me get that next property. Let me get that next, whatever. And then I'll prioritize my desires and my hopes and dreams at that point, right? At 60, and I think that number is crazy because a lot of people put off their life dreams until they retire 65, and then they're going to do something amazing with that time. What happens if you don't have that time? Yeah. Every day's a gift, brother. It's like, hey, this is what are you going to do today to bet on yourself? And I just decided not to live with that regret, right? I'm like, if I'm going to fail, I'm going to fail now, right? And I gave up my Microsoft house. I rented it out. I sold one of my Microsoft cars. I only kept one. I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment. I could barely fit my stuff in there, by the way. Try going from a mega house into a 1-bedroom apartment without ever having done that before. Moving down is tough, man. And I did that, and I gave myself 1 year runway. I said, man, this is either going to work or it's not going to work. And so I planned this out, right, Ruben? I'm not going to say like I jumped on a whim. This was like an engineer doing this.
Well, and I love how you said that.
Some runway.
I love how you said that, Gus, because first of all, give us a little insight about the tech. Hold up. Did I just hear Microsoft House and Microsoft Car? What are they hooking you guys up with over there? What's going on? What are the perks? Give us some of the perks over here. What is that?
What I meant to say was, my software engineer lifestyle and the brand. I had a brand new built house in one of the nicest suburbs in Seattle. The school district. It was like everything was new. I had the brand new cars. I had just the lifestyle that I could afford, right? Comfortably, I could comfortably afford all that stuff, and I had money left over at the end of the day for a trap, going to Vegas, going to Mexico all the time. I went to the Olympics. I did all these things, Ruben. But and it sounds, again, if you haven't gone through this, it sounds insane. But that sounds like the best lifestyle ever. You can never buy enough things to make up for an unfulfilled life. You can never buy enough stuff. There's not enough stuff out there to buy. If you feel that you're not realizing your full potential. I mean, that's something I learned by doing it. I hope someone here that's listening can learn by listening to me. Because I heard that before. It meant nothing to me. I was like, what? I want the stuff. I grew up as a kid in Mexico. This is a third world country, right? I was on the border with California, so I could see what the first world looked like, right? I'm like, I want some of that, right? Give me that.
No, I love what you're saying, Gus, because I think for us to also, and I think this is important too for entrepreneurs who it's not just for like if you're at corporate, like it's we talk about entrepreneurship sometimes in the lifestyle too as well, and the fulfillment. So work is work. Work won't feel like work, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're not also creating yourself another job as well. And you know what I mean? Like, because entrepreneurship
100%.
sometimes can lead into that. So what I love about what you're saying is that you're making good money. And it's okay to make good money, but then still not feel fulfilled. And I think that's important for people to listen to, because it doesn't matter what you're making, whether you're making 7 figures, 8 figures, 6 figures. There might be a time where you're like, I don't feel fulfilled and I don't feel like I'm in alignment with what I want. Forget what people are saying, because people might judge you and be like, oh, come on, who are you to complain? I think that's so important for you to say that, because then it makes us kind of go back to our internal compass of like, okay, what is it that I want? What is it that I'm working towards? But what I loved about that is like you still had a game plan with your pivot. And you mentioned something, I'm wondering if it was by chance, right? You said 10 years. So transition, was it because you were strategically also saying, hey, look, I'm going to work and fund this pivot and transition? Or was it that it took 10 years because you were kind of like maybe kind of not telling yourself the truth and you were trying to make it work? Because I want to understand both avenues are very interesting, and I want to make sure we're tapping on the right one. Which one was it?
Yeah. Oh, no. It was definitely the second one. I wasn't sure. And that is my, that's who I am. I'm a cautious guy. I am very risk averse. I want to be 100% upfront about that. There are risk averse business people out there. Right? Usually the ones that, the more I've learned to know myself as a business owner, I understand that I can struggle with making decisions quickly. Right. So my coach, business people that I get in business with, they have to compensate for that. I have to surround myself from people that tend to take action. Otherwise I can take too long. So that was my first lesson in probably analysis paralysis of what I needed to do and where I needed to be. But another thing, Ruben, to be super honest with you, I was kind of struggling with the stuff that I had. I had all this stuff, right? I had, that cost a lot of money. And then anytime you get, you're kind of caught in that, in a sense, right? Where you like the lifestyle and you don't want to go backwards, right? You're like, man, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I like to be the guys, netting $1 million. Can I jump into that guy? Because I don't want to be the guy that's barely making his rent payment. Can I be? And you can't do that. There is no fast forward, right? Unless you've got millionaire parents, you're not going to jump into that millionaire entrepreneur right away. I was fearful of that until I realized I had absolutely nothing to lose. And it really took my life events to kind of push me in that direction. And I'm talking about, entrepreneur, I'm biased, entrepreneurs based in the US. Yeah. You have once you realize you've got zero to lose in real terms, but some of your stuff, you're free. It's game over. It's like, The absolute worst thing that could happen to me in my case was that I was back and working in Microsoft, maybe at entry level position. That was the worst case scenario. And probably not even that. Probably somebody would like steal me away from at Amazon, Google, or Facebook. It was probably a win at the end of the day. I was probably going to make more money, probably, right? So I'm like, that was the worst case for me, my case. So when you look at it that way, it was crazy.
I love that because it's like a lot of us, we don't realize that, okay, worst case scenario, guess what? You can go back to what you were doing before. Like literally that it's crazy. And I think sometimes you just don't have that abundant state of mind. But let's fast forward. Let's fast forward because I can tell you and I are very connected that way with the personal development, being aware. Let's fast forward. Your wife's getting to real estate. You're watching from the side. You're getting some insights of it. You're gonna you want to make the jump. Okay, let's fast forward to today. What problem did you see existed and how tackle this business opportunity as we transition? Because now we're fast forwarding and every business is solving a problem. What did you see that was an opportunity? I was like, okay, this is the way I want to go. Or maybe did you stumble upon it?
Yeah, so there was a couple of problems that I saw that I thought were very interesting. Number one was real estate, retail real estate, just talking about retail, that's how we started the company, that there was a big struggle for folks to get on the phone. It's hard. It's hard getting on the phone. I would argue it's even harder now than it was 5-6 years ago when I started the company. It was hard to build that discipline in. It was hard to be that consistency. And but what I mean by getting on the phone, I mean about lead generation, lead follow-up, and appointment setting and getting deals, getting deals in the pipeline. A lot of that still, I would argue, still happens on the phone. Phone is still king in that sense, right?
Yeah.
You've got all these platforms now, instant messaging, texting, all these things. All that stuff is still true. It applies. But I would argue that phone is king then, phone is still king now, because a lot of deals still happen on the phone. Connections, two-way conversations still happen on the phone or Zoom or all these other platforms. So I saw people really struggle with that, right? It was hard for them to make the time. So I would see this happen, Ruben. And I saw this happen in my own business. I was scratching my own itch. You would get on the phone, make things happen. You'd get busy with the business you generated. And then 2 months down the line, you were back to square one. I don't have any income coming in. What happened? Oh, I don't have any deals pending. Why? Because I don't have any active clients. Why? Because I didn't make my calls 3 months ago. 3 months in the past, right? So I saw that kind of roller coaster of income that a lot of real estate agents and even investors, I'd say, kind of run into that same thing, where you get busy with deals and you stop doing the activities that are income generating activities. So I saw that. Right. I saw that as a problem to solve. And I discovered through the brokerage I was in, Keller Williams, that they went all in on this model where you would bring in someone in the team dedicated to telemarketing. Right? And they would call them the inside sales agent, ISA, inside sales. And that person would do outbound prospecting for lead generation, and they would do nurturing and appointment setting within the team. And that, again, being a systems-oriented person, a process-oriented guy, I was like, this is amazing. This is exactly how I can fill that gap in my business, my own business. So I went all into that business, and I had success with that role. And then I said, you know what? Again, connecting the dots backwards. I'm like, I'm from Mexico, right? And it was always a challenge getting folks in Seattle to hire them, train them, and retain them in this job. It was a difficult position to hire and retain for. I can build a team in Mexico that can do this, right? Hustlers like me that like sales, that can make it happen, are going to be great on the phone. Let me see if I can do that. And as soon as I said that, Ruben, 4 other people from my same brokerage said, Gus, if you're going to do that, I want to buy, like, cut me in. Here's some money. Get me one of those guys for my business too. 4 people told me, like, literally one of them, I said, I was trying to say no to him. He insists, okay, I'll take your money. So Ruben, I realized, so in real estate, you're always chasing the lead. You're always chasing the client. You got to like follow up. You can't take no for an answer. In this business, they were coming to me and wanted to put money down my throat because the need was so raw. The need was so urgent. And I said, I like that more than I like that other game. Let's see what this is about. So I experimented with that. I started it was 5 people on the team. One of them for my team, 4 other people for other folks. And I was like the trainer, call center manager, that was 2015, and away we went, right? So from there to now, again, it's not a straight line. Let me also say that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I actually want to stop you midway because you're
crazy,
dropping so
right?
many gems of the process. One thing I do want to ask is, at what point did you, because there's two things that I heard. You mentioned a team, and what's really key here, and what's really key is that not everybody may have experienced this because not everybody works in teams. So one thing I want to just take a step back is, okay, did you see this as an issue when your wife, and I don't know if your wife started with a team, and or did it only occur to you when it sounds like you became an agent as well?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Let me fill in that gap. I got licensed a couple years after my wife, and I would help her nights and weekends. I didn't leave Microsoft, and I didn't leave the mothership until 2013, right? 2013, when the market was like, and it hasn't stopped. The market was just on a big upswing. The depression was over, right? I mean, the property was starting to appreciate again. I said, now is as good a time as any. Let me take a few months off. I rented my house. Let me take a 6 to 12 months. Let me give me some runway. And let's see what we can make happen. And so I joined. So I was the first hire into my wife's team. So she had a team of 1, then she had a team of 2, right? It was 2 of us.
That's awesome.
And I built that up. I think we were 5 people. So it was an administrative assistant. My wife would do listings. I would do everything on the team. It was kind of the manager. We had a buyer's agent and an inside salesperson. So it was like, I think at the bare minimum, Keller Williams model team, right? Like a very, very bare bones. And we did about 10 million in volume yearly for about 3 years. We pretty consistently 10, 11, 12 million, about 250 to 300,000 in gross commission income, which I had never made that kind of money in my life, by the way. Microsoft had treated me well. I had never seen the checks I had seen in real estate, right? So it was like, that was interesting for me. But this ISA model called into another part of my brain. It was like, wow, what is this? I said, I can build a business here that I can scale this up to much bigger than I thought I could scale my real estate team in. And then I just as a system, and when you're looking for repeatable and scalable systems, I saw the ISA model as an unbelievably scalable and repeatable system, much more than I saw retail real estate, if that makes sense.
Wow. So I want to get right into that. I do want to talk about one thing that may help our listeners, because I think it's great when we see people who have done that transition. Is like, what was the conversation with your current employer like when you're looking to make that transition? You said you took a couple months off, but what does that look like internally? Like that do you remember where you were, how you said it, how it was?
I mean, absolutely, man. I remember to this day, right? So this is kind of a funny story. They didn't believe me. They're like, it's like, hey, I'm going to take some time off and I'm going to do this kind of side thing with I'm going to do this. And they're like, okay, so are you going to Google or Facebook, or is that real estate team? Is that in Google or Facebook? Because they literally want to know so they could escort me out of the building, right? So my manager, I didn't have a great relationship with my manager. That factored into it as well. He did not believe I was going off on my own. He just like, well, people didn't really do that. That wasn't a thing, right? So they kind of thought I was making it up. True story, 100% true story. I was making it up because I was taking an offer from Google and Facebook, and he was trying to find a way to get me kicked out because I gave him like 2 months notice. I was a manager. I didn't want to just get up and leave, right? So I gave him 2 months notice before I made the official change. And I was there. I did my time and I got up and left, right? Because they will not give you a hiatus, right? And at least at the level I was in Microsoft, that was not an option. You either stay or you're in or you're out at that level, right? You're in or you're out. And they 100% thought I was being poached by a competitor, right? 100%. And I was like, guys, this is just, no, that's not what I want. And literally I had the conversation at least 2 or 3 different times, like sit down face to face. So is it, just level with me, guys? Is this Google, Facebook, like Amazon thing? Tell me the truth. What is this about? Like, bro, I'm not making this up. This is 100% real. It was like, wow. And people were like, once my team were the first ones to kind of pick up on it saying, oh, you're for real. You're going to go do your own thing. Yeah, I'm going to do my own thing. And people were like blown away that was like for real, right? That someone would walk away from a job like that. And it was a kind of a funny story. But the conversation was really weird in that sense, where it was like, oh yeah, sure. Of course you're gonna go do your own thing. They didn't think it was real.
That's hilarious, actually. But good for you for taking that on and overcoming that pressure. So now let's get right into it. So what I love how you said you went back home, because I think that's a big thing for us too. Like kind of like giving back to your community and all that. And you know how it is down there, and you know how fortunate we are over here, especially when we're taking a
100%.
leap, which is really important as an immigrant. I can speak on that. So, what did that first test and experiment look like? You know the quirks of the real estate game. You know how, which I love. Why I always talk business we were talking about offline was spun off something that I had gone through first, right? And so you've gone through it. You kind of see, man, like this is like crazy. I got to keep this thing going. The system calling, because it's you set 3 months ahead, right? Is helping you get. So what was the first thing that you looked at to start bringing in an ISA, and how did that happen? And then kind of like give us an overview of how that kind of scaled to where that is today. What was the first one like? How did that look like, bringing somebody on your team?
Truth be told, it happened in my real estate team, like you said, right? I was doing something on my own. I was scratching my own itch. I was figuring that out in Seattle with someone like local.
Yeah.
So until I really nailed that part of it, I found someone, and I remember like this, I think it was the second or third month, he said 22 listing appointments for me. One ISA working, it was a full day, full shift. It was literally 1 or 2 a day. He could set 1 or 2 listing appointments per day. And this was, again, remember the context. It's 2013, 2014. The market is back, right? But most people hadn't noticed it, right? So it was ripe for the taking. And I said, wow, that's pretty awesome. Okay. So I said, this role is valuable. But it's a side note there. I closed 1 listing out of those 22 listing appointments. I realized I wasn't a very good listing agent. But again, that wasn't the point. The point was, okay, out of this whole experiment, I go, the ISA did their job, because I got in front of sellers, like motivated people that were going to list their house. You just didn't list it with me. Yeah. But this is valuable for the right agent. For the right agent, this is unbelievable, right? I said, okay, let me double down on this part. And from there, that's my mind kind of went working. Oh yeah, because my ISA left to become a mortgage person, right? They wanted to get licensed. They wanted to kind of move on. I'm like, man, that kind of sucks. I spent some time training them. Got to start from scratch. And I said, where that wouldn't be that big of an issue. If I got some of my homeboys back home to do this job, man, this would be the best job they've ever had, right? This would be the best job they've ever. Instead of the ISA role, the telemarketing role in the U.S. is seen as an entry-level role. It's not seen as a career. It's not seen as like, oh man, I've made it. I'm doing inside sales for this company. That's not really a thing, right? It's an entry-level position. It's an entry-level position. And that's that way in real estate. It's that way in SaaS. It's that way in all these industries. The SDR, ISA, outbound prospecting role is seen as not the top of the top. In Mexico, it was, right? Sales, English sales and telemarketing is a coveted position, right? So I said, okay, let me dig into that. Let me see if I can, given that that's true, let me go and see if I can talk some people into this job, right? It was easy, unbelievably simple to get people interested in this kind of role. And off we went. I was able to recruit, it was 5 people almost instantly, right? It was like way different than Seattle. It was way different. It was the feedback was immediate that I was onto something. The feedback was immediate, right? Like, okay, good. Instead of being used to like banging my head against a wall, which is a lot of times what making business happen in the US is like, for retail real estate, boom, 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 gotta power through. It was suddenly finding myself through a path of much least resistance. Unbelievably like, wow, that is super easy. Is there something wrong, or am I just onto a better model?
Yeah.
Am I just onto a better model, right? This is a better offer. This is a better, like everything's better in this. Let me try this out. Let me go and take that next step. So proving that out for that first group, those first 4 clients, those first 5 ISAs, that was then the step of, okay, let me see if I can reproduce what I already know how to do. Let me see if I can reproduce that in a different context, and it worked. 3 out of those 4 clients, or was it 2 out of the first 4 clients? Like they stuck with me after I think it was 3 or 4 months, right? 2 of them dropped off, 2 of them stayed, and I go, I can work with that. 50% drop off in 4 months. I can scale that up. I think that's useful. I think that's valuable. I think that's good. Little did I know that that's an unbelievably high retention rate in real estate for lead generation stuff, right? It's like 10% after 4 months or 3 months, right? In the typical lead gen game in real estate. So 50% was ridiculously good, right? So okay, I'm on to something. So that's how it kind of started scaling up from there.
So you started with your team. And then you started going to people in your brokerage. It sounded like you had,
Yeah,
4 yeses, and then how did that grow?
Keller Williams it's a big learning organization. So as soon as I had some success, I'm like, because I would teach a regular class at my market center, my brokerage office. I would teach a regular class every month, every couple of months. And I said, well, let me teach about this thing, right? I just found this out. Let me just show people what I'm doing. And it exploded. People were like, holy, they couldn't believe what I was doing. They thought that was like magic. It was like, amazing what was happening. And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually gonna go build this out of Mexico to see if it works, right? Because I bet you I can do. And just conversations after that class. The class was not a pitch, by the way. The class was not a come hire me at the end of it. No, it was like, hey, I'm doing this. And the people that were super into it, like, Gus, what are you doing with this? I mean, can you have people that I can hire? Like, I don't, but I might, right? When I go down to Mexico and do this, like, oh, okay. Well, then, boom, here's this money. So after the first one of those conversations, I had to make a mini 1-page business plan and go, well, how much am I going to charge? What's my, how much money can I make? I had a coach. I had an ISA coach that I asked a bunch of questions about. I actually went and visited his company, and he had an ISA business in the US based, a very different kind of market, very different kind of focus, but he had a call center in the US. So I went and visited him. I went and, knocked on every door I could at the moment. And I said, let's do this, right? Let's make this happen. I had the money to do it, right? To try something different, spin off a business, because I wasn't starting anymore. I had some income. I had some money to play around with. So I said, let's see if this is interesting. And that's kind of how I got into that part of it. That's how it scaled from Gus did this to how can I hire Gus? It's like, well, I better get something where people can hire me.
Oh, so now, let's looking at today. I know we talked about some of the numbers and the outbound calls, the agents. What does the operation look like at scale, and how have you built a team to service? I guess, is it just brokerages that you're targeting, agents? Like, how are you running this business model? Because I find it so interesting the way people kind of roll out their business models and from an experiment to then at scale in the marketplace. How does that look like today?
Yeah, it's been a lot about adaptation. And one of the biggest adaptations we've made from when we started in 2015 to now, we started the company as an outbound cold calling prospecting company. That was the whole goal. That was what was killing it back in 2015. Fast forward to now, 2021, market has changed. That is if I would have kept that mindset of, hey, I'm going to be the cold calling king of real estate, I would have gone out of business by now. The reason being that outbound cold calling has really changed the last few years. The technology is better. The anti-spam, hey, I'm honest. Unsolicited calls was my business. That's what I did all day. Unsolicited phone calls to people that weren't on the do not call. If you weren't on the do not call list in the continental United States, the high likelihood I called you in the last 5-6 years, right? Because we had campaigns everywhere, and it was pretty crazy. But that got harder. Right. And the robocalling really changed the industry. Right. I think the robocalls became so excessive that the carriers started to crack down on everybody, even if you weren't doing robocalls. People hated it. It was a terrible experience for the consumer. The operating systems and the phones got better at knocking people down. So the business changed. At the same time, a lot of the attention, a lot of the focus from real estate changed from outbound prospecting over to inbound lead generation, lead nurturing, and lead conversion, inbound lead conversion, right? Which is coming from Zillow.com, Realtor.com. Those are portal websites, Facebook.com, Google as well. Google's always been there. So a lot of the attention, focus, and budgets shifted to inbound when that happened for the industry.
Let's talk about that. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think, if you ask me now, do I pick up my phone anymore? I don't know. I don't know that I do, right? So, I was going to talk about that. I was going to talk about that being the elephant in the room, but you talk about an interesting pivot, and I'm not sure that, to all of our listeners are familiar. So can you give a high level understanding? I think, we understand the Zillows, the Facebook. Give us an inbound calling really is and how that works. So that our listeners have some kind of context as to why they actually might want to even consider a team like yours or system like yours. And then for those who are interested in business, to see how the pivot was made as it relates to the marketplace.
Yeah, 100%. Great question. I don't think anyone ever actually asked me that. So yeah, it was really interesting, because what we saw, when you're in the business, and you're tracking your numbers, right? How many leads did I get this month? How many appointments did I get this month? I'm the same as a real estate agent, the same as a marketing agency, the same as an investor. How much is it costing me to get a deal at the end of the day? How many appointments am I getting? And when we saw that model really started to shift in a big way, the obvious question is why, right? Do I have to drop my price? Do I have to, get better at converting some of these leads? But here's another thing. The clients always give you clues. The clients always give you clues, right? It's just that you're not always kind of ready. They're not going to go and say, Gus, you should change your business model. I have never heard that before, right? No one's ever going to say that. But when you ask them what they were doing with their budget, when they shifted away from cold calling, it's Facebook, baby. That's what everyone was doing. Or realtor.com. Like, man, I'm getting deals like out through these websites like crazy, and cold calling is just not doing it for me anymore. When you got down to it, it was mostly because of that. And the people that were killing it, making the big teams, getting in the top 10 lists and everything, were getting in early on those platforms. They were just killing it on these inbound lead platforms. And what I mean by inbound lead is that as opposed to cold calling, cold prospecting, where it's an unsolicited call, the inbound lead goes on a website and they're looking for homes, right? Like a portal lead, like a Zillow.com or a Realtor.com, or they're on a social media platform like YouTube, like Facebook, like Instagram, and they see an ad for a home. They see an ad for some kind of lead magnet, like a special offer, and they're interested and they give you their information. And that lead comes in and you give them a call, you text them, you instant message them, whatever it is, to try and, get more information, qualify them, set an appointment, go to the next step, right? That process, again, I saw a lot of parallels. You had to get on the phone, or you had to like start typing on that text, right? You had to send that text out. You had to engage. And if they responded, you had to engage with them. So I saw the same problem again, the exact same problem. Instead of being an outbound prospecting problem, it was an inbound conversion problem, right? It was an inbound conversion problem. Different kind of business, right? But same kind of steps, same kind of core need. It was further up the pipeline. It was further up the funnel, right? So it was like, okay, well, we're further down in the funnel. The leads were already coming in. That problem was solved now. We weren't doing lead generation for these teams anymore. It was, okay, Gus, I'm buying all these leads, and I can convert the easy ones, the ones that pick up right away, the ones that want to talk to me right away. But I'm like, what can I do to get more of these people to work with me? Because I never call them twice. They never call them the third time. They never, a lot of these things, you would see this, right? Like, okay, well, let me see. And, the answer was call them again and call them again and call them again, and text them and respond to their text when they text back.
Right.
Like
you'd be surprised. Oh my gosh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah.
That's it. Literally. I mean, it might seem obvious, but I think what you're saying is, and you're hitting the nail on the head here, is the thing is, the reason why your company is such an asset is that it's helping individuals work on their business. Because when you're in the business, yes, you could be making calls, but then are you making the calls and meeting the client? And I think people need to understand that you need that kind of arm in your business to kind of sustain, because you can be, you might have every intention to follow up and make the call or send a text, but you're also meeting other, if you're a busy agent, you're at appointments, right? So who's making the call when you're at appointments? So I think that's really important. What I love what we said is, I love this. Clients will always give you the clues, like listen to the marketplace. And I love that, because it's something I'm really resonating with right now, where, I think it's kind of the two, right? It's I think what Henry Ford said this. If I would have asked, what they wanted, they would have said a faster car or a faster horse. Faster horse. Excuse
100%,
me, right?
100%.
But at the same time, you need to hear them out, hear what their need is, and then understand the engine with as it relates to the marketplace. Because now people are on Facebook. So just to give some context, though, because maybe we might lose some people who are not as tech heavy, or maybe as up to speed with digital marketing. Just so we're very clear, and I think everyone's familiar with this, we've put this into context, but really what we're saying is that you might be looking at a home, and there might be on a Zillow or an ad there, or maybe on a Facebook, or maybe it's a Facebook ad. And when someone clicks it, they put their information in, and your team receives that information, and then you're following up with that call. Am I correct?
Correct, 100%. We're kind of the people that are gonna text you right away, call you probably multiple times,
Yeah.
like, hey Ruben, I got your message, man. Let me see if I can help you out. Tell me more about what you're looking for. Hey Ruben, is this the right number? I guess got your message to Facebook. Just double checking. I mean, we're trying to prompt you to respond, right? We're trying to prompt you to respond. And yeah, you're going to see a number, a local area code trying to call you, trying to reach you. I wonder who that is, and we're trying to talk to you. That's what we want.
Yeah, and the keyword you said was inbound conversion, right? Which is now they're coming in, they're showing interest, they're raising their hand, and you're saying, okay, let's communicate quickly. Now, you tell me, how quickly should one be responding? Because I know the timing is everything, right? Are you waiting a day? Are you waiting a couple of hours? I'm assuming the answer is no. But like, how critical is it for you to respond to that person? What would be a good time frame from someone who's listening?
So let me tell you another way. The consumer expects an instant response. The consumer expects an instant response. And take that however you want, right? I'm not saying that they're right, they're wrong. Is it easy? Is it not easy? The consumer, at the end of the day, this is their king, right? The consumer's king. They expect an instant response. And I blame the phone, right? They're on their phone when they're clicking on that app. They're on their phone when they're browsing these homes. Do you ever click on something on the phone and then expect for it to happen an hour later, right? I mean, or even 15 minutes later? Do you expect that feedback to happen an hour? I mean, it's like, Amazon is even experimenting with like 1 hour delivery, right? Because they think a day is too long.
Instant gratification, man.
It is.
We've been trained. We're getting spoiled so much that every other business has to adapt. You said it. Keyword was on. They're serving a lot of people, so now people have higher expectations.
They do.
Absolutely, right? And so you've been able to come in and do this. So what is your team kind of doing for that? You get an inbound lead. What is the turnaround time?
So we as soon as we get the lead, the way that we handle the instant response problem, because this is a big problem, right? And especially, and we have a couple of different offerings for this exact problem, for this exact reason. For people that are generating leads at a super high volume, we have embedded dedicated ISAs. Someone's in your team. They're a member of that team, and they're following your process, shepherding dozens of leads a day, hundreds and hundreds of leads, even thousands of leads a month into the right process. They're called lead managers, right? They're shepherding these leads through your organization. They're the first entry, the first touch point for those leads. So they help you, and it's a very in-depth role. We also have for people that are a little bit sooner in their journey through real estate, investing, loan officers. If they're just getting started, generating maybe only 50 leads a month, maybe 100 leads a month, which is the far majority of the marketplace, then we have a pay per lead option where I have a team of ISAs, right? A team of ISAs that as a group, they're going to respond and follow up with your leads. You're not going to get the benefit of a single person that knows, likes, and trusts you working on your team embedded, but you're going to get the benefit of somebody responding to that lead, somebody calling them, right? And so we have a couple of different offerings because the problem is complex. But in both those offerings, we always recommend that instant response has to be a text message. It's the most reliable source. It's the most scalable part of it, right? And at that point, you at least solve the speed to lead problem, right? Yes, you're going to call them right away, but there's no guarantee that call is going to, especially if you have only one ISA on your team. Like, what if they're already on a call? What if they're converting a lead? That's true. Right? That trade-off is hazardous to make, right? And sometimes it's easy for them. What if that lead comes in at 9 p.m. at night, right? So our pay-per-lead team is there until midnight, but not everyone's going to have that particular solution. So it's not just about speed to lead; it's also about speed to response, and we can respond to a lead very effectively, right? Because not everyone's going to respond right away. That's an advantage, right? Okay, great. Let's respond to the people that are actually responsive, right? And as our calling team catches up, let's engage them via text message. So there's definitely ways to so if anyone is generating leads online and they don't have some kind of automatic response set that up first, right? Don't hire the ISA yet. Don't scale the team. Don't, do all these things. Please, please, please find a way to respond to people right away. At least a chat bot. There's at least some automation in there to at least be responsive and get some of that information there. But ideally, you want to be able to respond to their text in a timely manner. And by that, I mean same day. If people did that, they would see a lot of movement in their leads as long as they're getting back to people same day. Texting allows you to do that to some extent, right? They will give you a little bit of time. You don't have to be right off the bat responding to them. but you want to engage, you want to do it. So how we solve speed to lead? Automation helps us solve speed to lead. But at that point, it's speed to response. How fast are you responding to people once they engage with you? That becomes the key metric.
So is that automated up front? Like, because I've seen this too, and we're in the vacation rental space, so we have like these auto responders, and then we have a person kind of come in. Is that the idea where there's an automatic response and then gives enough for a human to actually be in?
And depending how sophisticated you want to make your system, the bot can actually, like try to qualify them. The bot can actually take the conversation a little bit further. We don't do that because we have a team of people, so we don't rely on the AI, on the automation to do more of that. Because automation is awesome. It's not there yet to where it can really replace a person. At least not yet. Not in this space, right? Because the real estate space is a little bit. It's not a one and done transaction. I mean, the people are like, this is a 9 to 12 month sales cycle. People are like, they have questions, they've got context, so this has been a very difficult space to fully automate. We automate the outbound, those initial texts. Once someone responds, they're taken off that automation queue, and then a person goes in there. And I know different solutions have different parts. Some people respond maybe in the middle of the funnel, maybe towards the end of the funnel. Mm-hmm. We do it at the very start. As soon as they respond, they're taken off the automation piece.
Good for you. And I'm sure you're getting good results from that too. And I want to talk about real quick, because we talked about inbound. Right now a big player is Facebook, but do you guys also, do you work, what is Zillow doing? Is that them? That's a own separate team at Zillow? Do you guys have you taken some stuff from Zillow or Insight? Is it the same animal, or how does that work as far as inbound?
It's very different, right? It's very, very different, and for the investors, there's also the equivalent, where you've got these portals, and they own the SEO for a lot of these markets. They own the attention of the consumer. I mean, their brand, Zillow, is a massive brand in the US, right? And so they get a lot of attention, a lot of visitors, because they're just massive in that area. They absolutely own most of the real estate keywords in the US. I mean, they're a huge player. So they get the right to get that attention and sell it to the agents, right? They're going, hey, someone's looking for a property in your zip code. You own 2% of that zip code that I sold you. Here's a lead, basically, right? So that's how that works. And they charge a premium because those are typically high converting leads. My team can convert Zillow leads 30-40% of the time into appointments, into people want to talk to you right away. They want to go see the property. They want to meet you. They want to chat with you. Zillow does this too. Zillow has an internal ISA team. They try to live transfer the lead as well, right? So, I mean, there's different aspects of that.
And that's what I was curious about. Like, when you say you guys can do that, where do you fit into, like, if I like what I'm hearing already and I'm thinking of like bringing you guys on board, like how does that look like? Is that a different animal and a different stream when you're talking about Zillow, or is there a way you can insert kind of like a system like you have, or is it specifically straight for like Facebook? I'm curious.
Oh, no, we work Zillow as well. Typically, we're going to work leads that come in that aren't live transferred. The non-live transferred leads are the ones that we're going to follow up with, or the ones that become unresponsive even after they're live transferred. So they kind of hand them off. Usually the agents do that initial touch. And if not, they kind of hand them off to us to keep trying to reach them, right? To continue the follow-up, to not stop there. Reach out and reach out and reach out. And there's still leads, even in Zillow, that aren't going to be live transferred. They didn't pick up the phone, they weren't responding, whatever it is, they come through the pipeline. Zillow is still going to sell them to you. They're not going to stop, right? They just know that the live transferred ones are more valuable. So we definitely fit into that. We used to do it all, but now Zillow has gotten more and more of that function. So, Zillow used to be 50% of what we did. Now it's, I think, less than 10% of what we do nowadays, because they've gotten a bigger part of that market as well. So I'd say right now, 90% of what we work on, where we add the most value, is Facebook, because there is no, Facebook doesn't have a solution to this problem. Facebook says, here's a platform, knock yourself out, right? So I think we add a lot more value to those kinds of pipelines and those kinds of systems than Zillow, for example.
Okay, and does your company, would you guys create the creatives on the front end, or you guys just would have to work with a third party company, or maybe you would recommend somebody to actually create the actual ad so that you can kind of funnel those leads in?
We don't own the creative. We don't own, and that's a really, really purposeful decision. I told them, because we've gotten offers. I mean, my team, has gotten like, Gus, like this is so, obviously you always think that your part is the hardest. Like, man, the creative's so easy. We could just do this. And like, guys, I've always been as a leader of the company, I go, we have to double down on what we're the best at in the world. and we are the best in the world at this. Yeah, we can. We could be part of the commoditized creative. That part we could be in there, which is again commoditized. I mean, we're not going to be the best in the world at it. We're not going to differentiate ourselves enough to make it unbelievably valuable, right? So I've really resisted that kind of call. People have asked us. So we typically refer a marketing agency, a marketing service, a SaaS platform, or even people that want to like teach their own. We can refer people to trainings they can take to get up and running with Facebook ads. I'd say it's relatively easy to get it up and running. The hard part is being really good at it, like being optimizing these ads and really getting maximum ROI. That's hard to do. That is hard to do.
And it's a whole different animal. I'm so glad you said that, because I know that happens a lot in our business. Like, you'll have a client say, well, do you guys do that? And if you say yes to everything, you'll be a jack of all trades.
100%. And you lose value. You lose value. People kind of don't see it. They see the immediate payday for an incremental, earning. And I'm like, that takes a time, attention, and focus away from your core value proposition, right? And so focus on that 100%, right? 100%. And and I track this a lot, right? We track the top 10 Facebook campaigns that we manage, and we publish them. We talk about them all the time, and we manage hundreds of campaigns. Some of them managed by real estate agents, by investors themselves. Some of them managed by marketing agencies. The top performing campaigns, 10 out of 10, as long as we've been running this survey. Not even a survey. We're measuring the results, right? It's always agencies. It's always the pros.
Right.
The pros.
I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that.
The pros are really good at what they do, right? So yeah. So 10 times out of 10, an agency is going to outperform a consumer doing this. Surprise, surprise. I mean, I'm shocked, right? But that's true.
No, I think that's so important that you highlight that, even as a business owner, because in-house, if you're trying to say, oh yeah, we'll take this on, we'll do that. No, I think you're taking away from, like you said, your core value, and literally you're adding a distraction. So even whether it's you guys deciding to not take this on because you can have a strategic partnership, that allows you to focus on your craft, on what you're best at. And I actually love hearing that. And as a business owner, it's important that you're actually echoing and resonating with me, because I have to make those decisions. Hey, are we going to go that right? A lot of the big demands right now that we're hearing is copywriters. I'm like, okay, like, do we want to create that avenue of department, or do we want to like just find a way to funnel people into another company that is really, really good at it? And again, based on that, that's the way you should go, because then you're taking attention away from your craft. So I'm so glad you say that, because I think a lot of business owners who are listening 100%. To this can really resonate with that.
And it's hard, that's where you kind of really have to go down to the details and really trust your gut and what you're seeing, what you're going to be the best at, because telling the difference between something that you can incorporate into your offer and that value versus something that's just a distraction, that is not a, it's part, science, part art form, right? So it's kind of hard to say, because, and again, you always want to experiment. I don't know the answer. You don't know the answer, Ruben. Is the consumer willing to pay for that? Can you scale up that service? Like you said, is that something you can build in-house, or something you have to outsource to another company? I mean, what does that look like? And what's the value you can add at the end of the day to the consumer? So, I mean, I wish these kinds of things were like straightforward and very easy. It's not, right? If it were easy, everyone would have a successful business, right? Because these kind of trade-offs can be treacherous, right? But I think the more you get into that experimentation mindset, going back to the whole purpose of your show, the more you get into that kind of culture and that mindset and that, habit of trying something out and being a little bit more evidence-based, a little bit more, let's let the market decide. I think that's better. I think that's better. And then also 100% your own instincts too, right? I mean, that's what we bring to the table as leaders.
I love it. Real quick, as we transition into the insider secrets before we drop over, this has been incredibly valuable and insightful for all of us. What do you think the biggest misconceptions are with even the service that you offer? They're like, oh yeah, they'll handle it for me. Like, what is maybe something that you keep coming across that like, no, it's not quite what you might think it is? A biggest misconception in your industry?
I'd say the number one, or I guess close to the number one issue that I see, at least the most frustrating one that I encounter, is that people, real estate agents, investors, brokerage owners, agency owners, they always kind of assume that by hiring us, they're going to get rid of the phone. Like, yeah, great, I'm done. Gus, Power ISA and Gus are calling for me. I can retire myself when I'm not going to be on the phone anymore. And I think that's the wrong conclusion to reach, because you're hiring an ISA, even whether it's from me or anybody or in-house or whatever, right? It's different. In fact, because sometimes people would hire us because they hated the phone. They didn't want to be on the phone. They didn't want to talk to people on the phone. They wanted to meet people in person. They wanted to do other things, networking. They wanted to close deals. And I'm like, you've got it wrong. If we have success, you're going to spend more time on the phone than you did before. The difference is you're going to be doing higher value activities. You've moved up a link in the chain. You've moved up in that process. But if we're any good at our job, you're going to be busier in that link, right? Because that's what you want. That's the goal. And yes, we're going to be teeing up appointments and live transfers and those things. But that's just, you went from cold or warm prospects to very qualified prospects. You still got to call those guys, right? You're not done. This is not set it and forget it kind of a business. And I think some folks, they minimize that. They don't really see that for what it is. And, they kind of assume that I've got an ISA. They do everything. No, the ISA gets you more at bats. They get you more at bats. You still got to swing, right? You still got to prepare. You still got to be ready. So I think sometimes that's probably the biggest misconception. And that's the difference between delegating and abdicating. People want to abdicate sometimes the role to an ISA. Very incorrect. As far as all kinds of abdicating is going to be incorrect. This is just a particularly tough one for people to grasp sometimes.
I really love how you put that. Now, one thing I got to ask you is real estate agent leads versus real estate investors. Which one is harder?
I absolutely prefer the investors. To be really honest with you, 100%, man. It's not even close. I think let me phrase this another way. The investors that need a solution like mine, they have teams in place. It's a more mature business. They've got acquisition manager. They've got marketers. They've got maybe already have a calling team or have tried a calling team. So I get to talk. The investors that are looking for a solution from us are typically further down the path of entrepreneurship than the agents are. So the agent can be very new at their business. They're just discovering. It's going to be a rough journey. You have to kind of ride that with them sometimes. That rough journey of becoming a business owner and a business leader. The investors, for whatever reason, when they look for the solution, they're further along. So you don't have to kind of go through a lot of things you have to go through sometimes with the real estate agents, because it's just a different. There's way more agents than there are investors right now. Who knows, that'll be true forever, but for now, right now it is.
Well, it's very true. I think the only thing I can think of is from a wholesaling perspective. I know that's a very new kind of, well, I wouldn't say it's new. It's been happening for quite some time, but I think now you're getting a lot of people like, oh, it's the easiest thing you can do. Just start from scratch. And I think sometimes I come across a lot of also newbie wholesalers.
There we go. And I think that's a great analogy. I think it's great because I definitely have worked with wholesalers, but again, they were wholesalers that were taking the wholesale model and had scaled it up. They were scaling it to a team. They needed a team. They also had acquisition managers. They also had, so they would keep some of those fix and flips and they would wholesale the rest of it, right? Something like that. So yeah, 100%. I'm sure you have the exact same version of this in the wholesaling and the investing space, the same kind of problem. I just had less visibility into it, right? Because they didn't need my services most of the time.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that what you just said. Well, lastly, what is one, at least one thing that you feel that anytime you kind of insert yourself into a business, and because you guys have the ability to be an addition to a strong pillar, what is a missing piece that you're always seeing like, oof, gosh, I wish they would have that to make our lives a little bit easier?
Oh man, that's a really good question. So the way I would answer that, I would say, let me think about that. So because we're setting appointments, right? We're setting appointments. We're trying to get people, in front of more qualified prospects. We want to kind of raise that. We take something that's very unqualified and known, and we turn it into more of a known, understood entity. Yeah. I think sometimes that the business owners, depending on where they are in that entrepreneurial journey, they might not have the right pieces in place to get the most out of that. If that makes sense. They might have, they built the team, but they haven't. Just because you've built the team doesn't mean you've learned how to hire people. Doesn't mean you've learned how to train people. Doesn't mean you've learned how to hold people accountable. And I think a lot of times when we see a business owner have a great system, they got a great system in place, right? They've got some great leads. They've got a great market. They have a great offer. Sometimes the people aren't the right people that are in place, right? And that can be really challenging for folks to kind of deal with. If they haven't really flexed that muscle of hiring someone, training them, letting them go if they don't work out, retaining them if they're a great employee, if they haven't really worked on that muscle before, man, it can be a real challenge for them. They hold on to people that are not good for too long. They have a huge resistance to bring people on the team because they know it's going to be a draining experience. That I would say that is probably one of the toughest things I see. But that's going to be the difference between a business that can scale and one that's going to remain at its current size. It's a really important skill to develop.
Yeah, I wonder, do you guys step in that and be like, hey, would you consider that? Like, it's kind of an interesting thing because you guys are kind of
man. That is it's a really good question, because sometimes it's painfully obvious that that's the problem, right? Sometimes it is, but man, it's a really mixed bag. I mean, sometimes the owner, the leader, is open to that feedback, understands it. Sometimes they're just not open to that at all, 100%, right? They're not ready to hear that message. They're not ready to take that on. Everything else is the problem except that. That can happen, sure, and that's fair. I mean, hey, it's their business. They decide how they want to run it, 100%. But yeah, absolutely. Sometimes you can see it. But it doesn't matter if you can see it if the leader doesn't see it. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, what we teach at our team is the key word that I use in every huddle is like, would you consider? Have you considered? Right? Because it's not one that comes from an ego. It kind of protects the ego. It's just like, hey, just a thought. Have you thought of this? Right? But yeah, that's a very interesting situation. Real quick, right before we drop off, I always like to say, like I said, I open up the podcast by saying, you're a true reflection of your business. It's been incredible to see what you've been able to scale at, grow at. What do you think? Is there a good one of favorite resource, a book that you tap into that gets the gears going?
So I'm kind of biased because I spent so much time at Keller Williams. So I'm really, really biased to Gary Keller's books a lot. And I keep going back to them. I think they're great, great, great work. If you're in real estate, they're like, pillars. Millionaire Real Estate Agent is a book that I find myself going back to consistently. I built my business essentially on that model. And The One Thing is another book. It's a privatization book. It's a time blocking and privatization book. So I think both of those are very, very, very great books. As far as like business and going back to them, being a resource for me. Every time I read them, I get something different out of it, right? Every single time I go back to those books, a different part of them resonates to me. And there's a lot more books that have influenced me, but I think one of those are probably some of the best ones. And they're niche specific, right? To what I'm working on.
Yeah. And then what would you say one best habit that serves you on your day to day?
What's the best habit that, I think I got this from my parents 100%, right? Just working hard and not taking these things for granted. I think, being that immigrant background, growing up in a different place, I just have another expectation of what hard work is, right? And again, I thank my parents for that, right? I feel that I'm fortunate that I got that as in my upbringing. And again, my kids are born in the U.S. I'm like, I didn't take them back to Mexico to, to grow up there. I brought my kids to the U.S. I don't want to glorify it or, say, now that's amazing. I'm saying, I think I was fortunate to do that. And growing up in a developing country has some great things to it and has some really challenging things to it, right? So I'm just grateful for the good things, right? I don't really miss the bad things. So that work ethic you get and that expectation of kind of delayed gratification that you get from growing up in those kind of circumstances, I think is a gift. It's a really, really powerful thing.
I do believe that as well, that at a certain level, like I do believe that, being an immigrant you have a lot of certain advantage in that sense. I call it what you want, but I think it's embedded from really understanding, how far we've kind of come. Well, speaking of how far we've come a long way with this podcast. I mean, this has been incredible value. How can people tap in more into your network and what your team is doing, Gus, so we can plug in if we need to and reach out to your team and find out more about what you do? Where can we find out more?
The best way is my website, powerisa.com, and also Facebook. I'm super active on Facebook because a lot of our business comes from Facebook. You can type in powerisa.com or probably just PowerISA into Facebook, and you'll pop up. You'll see my free Facebook group. You can join if you ever want to continue the conversation. That's a great place. I love interacting with folks there, or our website. That's a great way to kind of reach out and kind of see what we're up to.
Absolutely. We'll make sure if you're driving, hang on to the steering wheel. We'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes. And I can't thank you enough, Gus, for stepping into the lab, sharing all your gems as a systems driven guy. Definitely going to take us up to the next level. And just like that, on that note, guys, we are out.